but 2 is death.
Ladies, gentlemen, and friends beyond the binary, welcome to the Monday Discourse for today, June 20th, 2022. Hi, I am Tristan, your host for today. I am the host of a couple of things. I'm the host of Step Back, the YouTube channel you're probably watching this on right now, where I talk about stuff and things, specifically about how the past is significant for understanding the present and all that kind of stuff. The other thing I do is I co-host a podcast called It's Probably Not Aliens, where me and Scott Nicewander explore and debunk all sorts of nutty things from the show Ancient Aliens, and also ancient astronaut stuff and pseudo-history, pseudo-archaeology, and all that kind of thing. It's very good. Is Mia going to be here? No, she is not here this week. I stream on Mondays at noon, and if you want to support my, and I go by he, him pronouns, and if you want to support my work, the places you can do so are at patreon.com/stepbackhistory, where I have like a weekly Q&A video. I have early releases for videos. There is voting on future video topics. There is, what else do I provide for patrons? I give a weekly update about how things are going. All that kind of stuff. I try to make as much value for $1 as you can get. So if you want to be a part of that, then sign on up for about 84 cents a month if you do a year. So, yeah. But also, if you got Amazon Prime, Twitch Prime, very welcome to help keep this whole thing moving, as well as things like Super Chats, Bits, and Twitch subscriptions. On that note, I think I saw that something happened while I was getting ready. Yes, a totally different username subscribed for a month at Tier 1. Thank you. 9 months. Yikes. Good stuff. Thank you so much. Much appreciated. Totally different username. And yeah, if you want, my latest video is on the sort of... my latest video is on the Uvalde police and like all the stuff that went down with police having no actual legal requirement to help people, and that their job is really just to protect the powerful. Very dark video, but interesting stuff nonetheless. And my next video is, I don't know, I'm still knee deep in this brief history of Russia that I'm working on. It is now over 5,000 words, the script, and it is showing no signs of stopping. I'm probably maybe halfway-ish through the video. But but it means I'm gonna have to put down my pencils and work on something else so I can have something come out next week. So I gotta think of what to make for next Monday. I'm thinking the keyword research is making me think that I need to talk about the manosphere, but I don't really know what exactly to talk about with the manosphere, so I'm gonna have to poke around and see if there is anything. Yeah, if you want to submit questions for future streams, you go to stepbackhistory.com/stream question, or I'll put a link in the chat so that you can fill it out there. And yeah, and also if this is your first time watching the stream, hello and welcome to this thing that I do. Hope you know that you're welcome. And yeah, if anybody in the chat wants to say hello, we have a very welcoming chat community, so please, if this is your first time, say hello. All right, so that's the majority of things. Do you need more Q&A stuff? I've got a fair amount of questions, but also when I'm streaming solo, I go through questions a lot faster, so we'll see where things go. I don't know how the next 2 hours are gonna pan out, but let's do this thing. How is chat going on? Someone saying the police anarchist demonstration was beaten up by the cops. That fucking sucks. Even the Dutch cops. Oh boy. But yeah, I was kind of tuned out this weekend. Miss you so much. Oh, thank you, the good Morty. Oh, and thank you for the for two 420-bit things, man. That's so kind. Thank you so much. Yeah. So what's going on in the world? I guess I don't know. So what have I been up to? I have been. Oh, this weekend I'm very sorry. I did not get a lot of sleep last night because of just got a little tipsy last night, and then yeah, just had to get up super early because the baby wakes up at like 6 a.m. So I'm not good sleep paired with not a lot of sleep. So I'm a little out of it. Most of the videos I see on the manosphere is about how misogynistic they are. There's enough talk about how consistently they align with the far right. Yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah, I was thinking about looking at maybe talking about misogyny's role in contemporary fascism and like how hyper like there's this like book that I read last year about sort of aspects of fascism, and one of them is like hyper traditional gender roles and stuff like that. So that could be an angle to go down. Be pretty fun. How was Father's Day? Father's Day was fun. That was my first Father's Day was yesterday, so that was fun. Briefly called my dad. We talked for a little bit, and basically the big thing is that we had some friends over and we had like a little barbecue, and baby played on the back deck for a little while. And we then, after he had gone to bed, we had a campfire, and it was pretty good. So we got a little fire pit in our backyard. So we brought out some of the old lumber that we had sitting around and burned some wood and cooked some marshmallows and stuff like that. So overall, very good day. I would say that as far as Sundays go, that's about as best as you can get. Yeah, so all that stuff is going. But yeah, I'm going to do some keyword research later to figure out what's going on with because like there's a little bit of buzz about the manosphere kind of just being drummed up by FD Signifier's recent videos, basically 2 of them, And I kind of want to, and also Jesse Gender made one on James Gunn and the Manosphere. And so while that's being talked about, I want to kind of try and get in and slurp up some of that viewer juice. And I just need to think about what would be a good topic to hit that I actually would be relevant to talk about. So, yeah. As far as Father's Day goes, oh, what did I do? We had a pretty good time. I got a lot of texts from people. My wife put a very, very cute post on Twitter. So it was all very, very charming. All right. Let's see. Let's take a look at. It's been 10 minutes. Let's try to delve into the questions and see what we can get into. Juneteenth. Yeah, Juneteenth was yesterday. The anniversary of the end of slavery in America, if I remember correctly, which becomes sort of what's it called? Like sort of a Black Pride holiday, which I'm pretty cool with. I think that's a good idea. And today is the first day of summer, right? You wouldn't know it from being outside. It's 19 degrees and raining. But then tomorrow it get to real summer. So it's 19 degrees today and raining. Tomorrow it's going to be sunny and fucking 34. Like I'm just dreading. Oh my god, it's going to be the worst. All right. Let's see what questions people have been asking. We got lots of fun questions, so let's just chew into the Surinamese Day of Emancipation, the end of slavery in Suriname, celebrated July 1st. That's pretty cool. That's Canada's like national holiday here. All right, I see. So first question we got here is, I see art of Superman beating up Homelander and Omni-Man. This feels like such a childish misunderstanding of the point of the two latter characters as a commentary on Superman. How can people miss the point this hard? I don't know. This actually hits on, because the fact is, like, there was a video game that came out a couple days ago, a like Starship Troopers video game, and I always am like blown away by how hard people miss the point of Starship Troopers and the whole like commentary it makes about American fascism and all that kind of stuff. Done by what the hell's his name? Freaking Dutch director who did RoboCop. Anyways, Verhoeven, yeah, Paul Verhoeven. To me, like every time I like to think about like, it's like did anyone ever see the like Starship Troopers came out, that was supposed to be like an explicit criticism of fascism and jingoism and like the militarization of the United States. It then immediately gets followed up with a direct-to-DVD sequel that does not imagine any of that in any, like, does not investigate that aspect of society in any way whatsoever. Despite the fact that, like, it even says, like, kind of in the sort of subtext, if you, like, watch, like, the stuff, like, it's very heavily implied that the bugs in Starship Troopers are only angry at the humans because the humans are basically colonizing their space. And then there's also some reason to believe that the asteroids that hit the Earth are actually a false flag to just drum up enthusiasm for a war that is flagging enthusiasm. And so that's a thing. And that Paul Verhoeven like specifically was using it to shit on the author of Starship Troopers, who basically was a fascist. Gosh, names are escaping me today, but Starship Troopers was written by very famous freaking science fiction author who is basically a fascist himself. Robert Heinlein, yeah. And so when the movie came out, and it's like this really, really cool criticism of like fascism and like how Americans just completely miss the point of stuff, or how the movie went completely above Americans' heads because of their sort of culture focused around militarism and interest in what's it called, authoritarian mindsets and stuff like that. But yeah, then they made a direct-to-DVD sequel that was terrible and had absolutely no consideration of the sort of themes and stuff. And then they also made they made another one too. They made a TV show. I don't know if everyone remembers. There was the freaking hard R Starship Troopers movie that was like incredibly violent and brutal and depicts a fascist society in a endless war against basically completely like a completely innocent species of aliens. Then they made a kids cartoon out of it that was called Roughnecks. That was, again, just completely missing the point of the whole thing. And then furthermore, the reason I'm talking about it is because they made a new video game. They made a freaking Starship Troopers video game that came out like a few days ago. And apparently it's not very good. And yeah, I was about to get to this, but yeah, they also did the exact same thing with the sequel to Jarhead, which like Jarhead was this movie about a guy it's basically a movie about the Gulf War. And it's about how fucked up war is and how like military indoctrination gets into your head and stuff like that. But then they made sequels to Jarheads, and it was like literally like the worst fucking movie I've ever seen in my life. So, yeah. Dodgy Vice because Verhoeven's a creep. I imagine he has a very different reputation in the Netherlands than he does here, because I always think of it as like the sequel to RoboCop, or as like sort of the director of RoboCop, and RoboCop has like some like explicitly like RoboCop and Starship Troopers as like a duo are some serious criticisms of the sort of fascism in 1980s and 1990s America. I would argue that Starship Troopers was one of the most prescient like movies depicting upon where American culture was headed than any movie I've seen. So there's that. But then yeah, like there's that meme where it's like, wow, cool people shooting guns, and it kind of like, the whole like it goes over their head about how this is what the hell's that guy's name? Who's the actor in Neil Patrick Harris is literally dressed up like he's a fucking SS officer, and yet they still don't see it. It's wild. It's wild how people don't see that shit. False flag in Starship Troopers is a 4chan meme. It was explicitly the bugs that destroyed Buenos Aires. If you watch the movie, false flag wasn't implied at all. All right. No, but what there is though is that is more accurate, which sort of describes if you were to compare. Wow. Okay. I'm about to say some. I'm about to make a real fucking take here. If you're to compare the attack of Buenos Aires in Starship Troopers to 9/11. Because there is this scene in Starship Troopers. It's very, very short, but there is this scene that shows it's like a political talk show where they're debating the war in Klendathu and stuff like that, and they point out that like the bugs never attacked us until we started colonizing their space, and that they're basically just defending themselves, and it's like. Yeah. Hey, it's Tristan. You won't shut up. Who didn't know you were on Twitch? Hey. Yeah, I took some time off because I had a baby a little while back, but now we're doing it. Yeah. Roger Ebert called the movie fascist by the fact that it was clearly mocking fascism. Well, I mean, at least he noticed. A lot of Americans didn't notice, and I think that's even more terrifying. That it just went completely over their head because Americans are so indoctrinated to fascist, militarist propaganda that like they didn't even notice that that Starship Troopers takes place in like an absolute nightmare world. Where life has no meaning and war is the only like aspect of society that goes anymore. So, if you want to do a link between the Manosphere and white supremacy, I recommend Talia Levine's Culture Warlords. Excellent book on the subject. I'm actually reading it right now. I am reading that book. I'm reading several books, but it is a book that I have currently on my Kindle that I am slowly reading through. No Mia today. Nope. She only, because of her availability, she only comes in about every other week. So this is the off week. The only good bug is a dead bug. Yeah. Like there's so much good shit that that Starship Troopers, the movie, says about propaganda and jingoism and all that kind of shit. And just in America, just completely over their heads. And then it seems like all of the follow-up media, like I said, like I kind of mentioned earlier, that the sequel and now this video game and the friggin' kids cartoon all just completely don't understand what the movie was about. They're just like, hey, it's a cool soldiers fighting bugs. I also remember when I was a kid because everyone was like, this is just a StarCraft movie. And I'm like, kind of. I have a very like what's it called? I have a very, if there's ever a setting in a game that has like eusocial insect aliens that are like or eusocial collective monster aliens that are going to devour the universe, I think they're cool. Like I'm a really big fan of the Zerg. I'm a really big fan of the Tyranids. I'm a really big fan of the xenomorphs in friggin' Alien. Just I don't know. I love that shit. I love that shit. I take it that you're a Tyranid player then. If I mean, I need to take out a second mortgage to play Warhammer, but theoretically, if I were to play Warhammer, I probably would be a Tyranid player, despite the fact that I actually have an orc tattooed on my body, so there is that. But I love the aesthetic of the Tyranids, that's for sure. Also, like, the Terrans in StarCraft initially literally used the Confederate flag. Yeah. Well, like, the theory, the thing is, like, the trick, what they were trying to go for in StarCraft, not to defend their use of the Confederate flag, I think that was fucking bullshit. But the idea was, I think they were trying to do a thing where they took, because, like, the story behind the Terrans in StarCraft was that the Terrans were humans that were basically prisoners that were put on like a sort of sleeper ship to be sent into like to do prison labor. But then the ship got lost and they like disappeared for like 400 years and wound up on the other side of the galaxy in the Caprula sector, where they didn't even know where Earth was and nobody knew where they had gone. And so it was supposed to be like sort of like 4 generation ships, yeah. And they're like that they basically were like descendants of like you know, prisoners, like white trash redneck type folks. And so like that's why the culture is the way it is. So like the idea is that they're like they made the Terran Confederacy and then they use the Confederate flag despite the fact they don't even know what it means. They don't even know what it's about or anything like that because the movie or not the movie, StarCraft 1 episode 1, you are literally playing like a rebellion against the Confederacy. Because the Terran Confederacy is like bureaucratic, overarching nightmare that doesn't look out for its own people and is experimenting on people. And then you're the part of like trying to help Arcturus Mengsk overthrow the government. That's like the first arc of the StarCraft story. And so yeah, I don't think it had anything super enlightened to say about the Confederate flag. It was the 90s, and it was Blizzard, organization that's made by a bunch of like cokehead metal guys who who were very much not progressive thinkers whatsoever, and as we've learned, were basically gigantic sexual harassers. So I'm not giving them too much credit, but there's some clever stuff going on in the StarCraft 1 storyline. So there was that. I ended up playing a lot of StarCraft because the Zerg are amazing. I love the Zerg. The Zerg are the coolest. Because they're just reskinned Tyranids. Because StarCraft started as a licensed Warhammer 40,000 game, but then they lost the license, and so they made the StarCraft story so that they could keep all the work they did, but not have to, but they could still release a game. So yeah, like the Terrans are supposed to be the Imperium, and the Protoss are supposed to be the Eldar, and the Tyranids are the Zerg are supposed to be the Zerg are supposed to be the Tyranids. So how to describe the Protoss? So like the thing about the Protoss, their whole thing was that they were like these like hyper advanced aliens that essentially were brought low by their own hubris, because they were like they're like kind of like a cousin race of the Zerg, because they were both made by the same like genetic engineered far future race, the Xel'Naga, and they were like but their whole thing is that they had a huge schism over whether or not to link all of their minds in like a psychic network, and that the dark I was about to say the Dark Eldar, the Dark Templar are essentially like the Protoss that did not want to join what they call, I think, the Conclave or something like that, or no, the Kabbalah, or which is also very not cool, guys. But yeah. Yeah, so now that I've completely bored the entire chat by talking about fucking StarCraft for 20 minutes, we can return back to the original question, which is that see art of Superman beating up Homelander and Omni-Man, which just is like, how do people miss the point? And it's like, yeah, people miss the point all the time. And there are some very egregious examples. And I think in this case, like, this is the thing, is that this is like kind of going back to the main thing about Superman, is that Superman is a complicated hero figure, and he kind of it's kind of like Captain America and the things that different writers have done with Captain America, which is that both of them are stand-ins for the United States, and when that is tied to the United States is a extremely controversial country for what it does. And so very much different authors throughout times have had their takes on Superman as their takes on American imperialism or America in general. So sometimes Superman is supposed to be held up as what some people say, the ideal of America is. Like, this is what America should be. Which is problematic in a lot of ways. But then people will use it, the Superman archetype, as a criticism of America, which is where you see things like Homelander in The Boys, where the Superman is somebody who has been given infinite power and uses it to basically become a complete psychopath. And Omni-Man, which is if I remember, that's the main character from Invincible. Is that the name of the show? Invincible? I think so. Which is sort of a supposed to be a talk about, like what's it called? Like, I don't know if there's much of a commentary on that one, and just more of the idea, like, wouldn't it be scary if like Superman was secretly evil? Yeah. Someone asked if I had opinions on StarCraft 2 or if I played StarCraft 2. I did play StarCraft 2. I was really into StarCraft 2 when it was first coming out. Like, I was in the StarCraft 2 beta in, like, you know, early 2010, and I played it quite a bit in 2010. I had a lot of friends. Like, I got into StarCraft 2 commentating and stuff like that, and I had a lot of friends who were professional players. I still have some friends who are, I think, still professional StarCraft 2 players. And I even got paid once to be a shoutcaster in a Toronto-based StarCraft 2 tournament. But that was all during the Wings of Liberty time period. And what's interesting to me is that I actually, like, completely checked out of StarCraft 2's, like, scene almost right when the game came out. And it's not because the game came out, because I basically stopped playing video games around September of 2010 and didn't really play video games again until... I never really played video games to the same extent ever again. I still don't play video games all that much anymore. And that's because I went to university, and where I went to university, they had extremely slow internet and a very low download cap. So I basically had very limited to no internet for a majority of the 3 years that I lived in Quebec. And so and that basically was 2010 through 2013, which was like period when all of gaming really went online, and I never had a console, so I basically just stopped playing video games for the most part. Sort of where I'm at. So the other thing about the boys, kind of on the thing about the boys that's important to know, is that, and this is sort of, I've said this about a few things in, like, adaptation, because we live in, like, this age of cultural necromancy where basically nothing new can ever be made anymore. We're always just rebooting things from the past. And because of that, The Boys shows this very specific thing that needs to be said, which is that The Boys has a lot to say on political commentary based on the time that The Boys came out, which was kind of during the Bush administration. I kind of talked about this with Mia last week about when talking about The Handmaid's Tale, which was that, like The Handmaid's Tale rings as scarier in the context of the time when it was made, because The Handmaid's Tale came out in, like, the 1980s when, like, the Jerry Falwell was at his peak, and, like, evangelical Christianity was, like, and, like, that kind of, like, new right-wing Christianity thing was, like, the peak of, like, what was scary, and that kind of, like, Christian right was, like, a real threat, and that's sort of the context that The Handmaid's Tale came up with. And then, but then it kind of, like, you make it in modern day, and the idea of, like, evangelical Christians sort of taking over and making a theocratic government doesn't really ring as very plausible anymore. Because we realize that you don't need to be Christian to be fascist, basically. And it's like, there's that. Evangelicals are still a major force. Maybe. Nowhere close to what it used to be. And, like, the fact that, like, they supported Trump in the most recent election, like, there are more factions at play than evangelical Christians now. And a lot of the things that Christians used to be, like, Christian right used to do on the main stage of American politics specifically, are no longer couched in religious language. Like, the powerful people trying to take down abortion rights or taking down rights for LGBT people are not really, like, they're not, like, mega preachers or anything anymore. It's like, now we know that you don't need to do this. Like, yeah, it's there's a lot going on there. Like, yeah, I feel like evangelical Christianity in America has hit a sort of high watermark, and it is, and I mean, The Boys is definitely commenting on, because the thing is, like, The Boys, especially season one, I think they actually, I think someone was pointing out in the chat that they've definitely turned it around. I think it was Claire, yeah? But they did sort of turn that around. Because season one was very much like, it felt like it was, it would have been very poignant if we had been watching it during the Bush administration, because it was talking about the sort of connection between Homelander and all of the the evangelical groups and stuff like that. But then season two, I think really they took the they realized that, like, the evangelicalness is not what would make Homelander scary in a modern context, and they tied him to Stormfront, clever name, the neo-Nazi supervillain who I find very interesting because, first of all, the actor who played Stormfront was the star of a show called You're the Worst, which is sort of like a dramedy that like a dramedy about relationships and stuff like that, like for like years before, like it was like her first gig after that, and it's weird to see her go from like this comedy show to neo-Nazi Superman or whatever. But yeah, I think that season two definitely turned that story around. So I guess like that statement on The Boys that makes it feel like it's from a different era is more a statement about season one, and that they definitely responded to it in season two. And I have not watched any of season three yet because I am extremely slow at watching television. I'm currently trying to finish Arcane, which was because so I'm still slowly working through that show. Stormfront is in The Boys comic. He's just that universe's Thor equivalent. Oh, really? Well, thank you for the super chat, Matt. I did not know. This is the thing, is I haven't read the comics, so I don't really know what belongs to what thing. But I imagine the choice of using Stormfront and talking about Nazi shit in that sort of second season makes a lot of sense, given that that's a much more poignant villain than like the sort of evangelical side of things, which I don't know. I feel like that would have been scarier if it was like, I don't even know when The Boys came out originally, like 2006, when like, you know, the peak of the Bush administration. A lot of because like the whole thing about how they're like secretly setting up like Middle Eastern terrorists to have superpowers so that the private corporations can get like military funding and stuff like that. Like that all feels like very like War on Terror Bush era commentary that it felt like a little weak in modern day. And then the Stormfront season was a lot more poignant. If you ever want to do a thing talking about Invincible in the future, give me a call. I know way too much about Invincible. I don't know what to say about Invincible yet. I have watched the season. I haven't thought a whole lot about it, but I enjoyed it immensely. I liked that it was a serious superhero story that that wasn't cynical about superhero stories, if that makes sense. Like, it's not like The Boys is fun. It's a good show. It has a lot of cool things to say. It's also a very much a like deconstruction of superheroes as a concept, while Invincible definitely seems to be made by somebody who likes superheroes and likes the sort of comic book genre, but is doing something more grown up and serious with it. And I feel like that there's not enough of that approach to things. There's either like completely unaware, like, you know, corporate sellout bullshit coming out of Disney, or there's like this sort of cynical deconstruction of the entire genre that's in like something like The Boys, and this whole thing that's like, actually, I'm kind of like, you know, I like the genre, just I'm doing something a little bit more intense with it or something different with it. And I think that was pretty cool. Plus, Zachary Quinto was really good in that show. Um, I mean, you guys can all, like I said, like a lot of this stuff might not apply to certain different contexts, but we're talking about American media, and you're talking to and getting the musings of a Canadian who has master's degrees in American cultural studies. So I'm just trying to stick to the things that I know about. Because yeah, I like someone was saying something about like evangelicals are still a threat in like Bolivia and stuff like that. And I'm like, sure, yeah. I am sure somebody who's like a Latin American studies person would be able to tell you a little bit more about that, but I'm talking about in the context of the things that I know about because, as I've said in the past, I'm not Vosh. I tend not to talk about things that I don't know about. I tend to only talk about things that I have read and you know have actual education on, rather than just making shit up off the top of my head, but being very confident. And because of how toxic masculinity works, being confident and being an asshole makes people think that you're smart. So there's that. Yeah. Sounds like evangelical. Yeah, evangelical. I do know that a little bit, that Brazil is like having this like Protestants are sort of like evangelical Protestants are like starting to displace the Catholics, and it's like becoming a whole thing. That was good. I need like this is what I need to do. I don't know how to, I when I started this stream, I felt like I was falling asleep, and now I have energy because I've been like warmed up, and I need to like warm up before a stream, but I don't know how to do it. Far-right evangelicals never went away. Yeah, in the United States, there are still far-right evangelicals. It's just that they are nowhere near the cultural powerhouse they used to be. Like, I don't. Maybe it's like some of you guys are too young to really appreciate that. Like in the '90s, like some of the most powerful political figures on the American right were like actual like preachers, like people like Jerry Falwell and Pat Robertson and stuff like that were like big figures. And now, you know, Jerry Falwell's been dead for over a decade, and Pat Robertson, I think everyone thinks is a joke because he said that America deserved 9/11, and that basically like or that Katrina was caused by the gays or something like that, and it completely like destroyed his career. But like I think a lot of times like yeah. The other thing too is that in the aughts, in the 2000s, a lot of the very big mega preachers like did jail time for embezzlement, and like sort of the public consciousness that a lot of those like mega preachers started to get exposed for being essentially like hucksters and frauds. So now people are blaming inflation on trans people and getting applause. Yes, and if you notice that a lot of the anti-trans bigotry that's happening is not using religious language to justify itself. They realize that angle doesn't work anymore. What makes a good female slash POC character? I'm trying to learn to be a better person of culture issues. I'm trying to. What do you mean? Suggest reading our media, like fiction that's good, or what do you, or like analysis stuff or whatever? Do you think this sort of adaptation culture is related to people not wanting the backlash that comes with modern satire, though? Maybe. I think that it has more to do with the fact that after the financial crisis, like a lot of like especially movies and TV shows are basically giant gambles, right? Like people invest a whole lot of money to make these things. Like movies cost millions and millions of dollars, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars now. And like you want to make a movie that is successful enough that it'll get a return on its investment, right? after the financial crash, there was a lot less money to be thrown into these kinds of projects. So what a lot of producers did is they were like, okay, we're going to only throw money at projects that we are very sure is going to get a good rate of return. And if a product has a established, like an established fan base, and the writing is basically already done for you in the form of like a comic or an adaptation or something like that, you don't need to develop the story as much. You don't need to sort of build an audience for the work because it already exists. And so a lot of that gets taken away. And so it was a much safer bet. And then when they started making like in 2008, that's when Iron Man came out. And they realized that just mining nostalgia and adapting stuff is a very successful formula for making something that will it'll be fairly safe, that it'll make enough money that it'll return your investment. And so now, because profit is the only thing, because movie production companies don't make movies. They're not in the interest of making movies. They're in the interest of making money. And so if it makes more money, then they have decided now to basically stop investing in lots of projects with a little bit of money, and instead are investing in a few projects with a shit ton of money. And to make that successful, they need to basically put something that is an adaptation so that they don't have to, it's the safest bet, right? And so now everything's an adaptation. Iron Man was good, but the consequences of success have been disastrous. Yeah, I would also say that the same thing is true of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I think that's where it all started. The Lord of the Rings trilogy was extremely formative for my generation because, I was the first Lord of the Rings movie came out in, I want to say 1999 or 2000. So I was 11 or 12 when that movie came out, when those movies came out. And they were so successful that basically everyone just wanted to adapt everything. But yeah, 2001, yeah, it was December 2001, so I would have been 13. So it was very formative to me specifically. But I think that, yeah, the sort of culture that has been developed out of the success of the Lord of the Rings movies and the success of the Marvel Cinematic Universe has basically resulted in the general thought process in Hollywood now is that nothing that isn't an adaptation is going to work, and that the safest bet, the best use of your movie dollars is just to keep adapting things, to never make a new thing ever again. You were 12 when the MCU started? Yeah, I was 19. This is why the MCU has been fine, but I haven't been super, super interested because I feel like I was this is the other thing, is in my 20s, I kind of stopped watching movies, and I kind of stopped watching TV shows, and I kind of stopped playing video games. So I've been kind of checked out of culture for a lot of the time that the MCU was in its peak. And so I it is completely doesn't penetrate me very much. I basically spent 2010 to 2013 just being, my only interest really being social stuff. I spent all my time going out with friends and getting hammered rather than watching movies or playing video games and stuff like that. And then in my last year at university, I was in student government, which basically ate all my time. So I never really and also, where I lived, going to the movie theater, you had your choice of the one movie that was playing in English. And it was typically something that I wasn't interested in watching. And there was no TV. There's no TV. I had no TV in my dorm room. So for 3 years, I had no regular access to television. I had no real movies. I didn't have a console, and I didn't have much internet, so I didn't really have video games. So I basically just did not do any of those things for 3 years. And that would have been around 2010, so that would have been when I was about 22 years old. But now I'm like, all I have is like I'm trying to like actually incorporate some movies and TV shows into my life, and I'm finding it difficult. Tristan is having friends and quality time with them versus normie movie watcher. Oh my god. Yeah, I don't know. That was my life for 3 years, and it sort of was the reset on everything. I came, like the thing is like what's it called? When I returned to Ontario in 2013 to go to grad school, that's when I had like decent internet again, and I had like I wasn't in student government anymore, so I had a little bit more time, and I didn't have as many friends, so I was at home a bit more, and that's when I started like playing like games and stuff again. But that's also when I noticed that YouTube had become like a hotbed of right-wing radicalism, and it was gone. Because I was like, holy shit, what the fuck's going on? When like, because I came back and like Gamergate was happening, and I'm like, what the hell? Because it was not like that when I left. Like when I had stopped watching YouTube a lot, that was when like Elevator Gate was at its peak, like in 2010, and then I came back in 2013, and all of a sudden like that had freaking metastasized into like this right-wing reactionary movement that I was like, holy shit, okay. Hey, thank you for the $10 super chat, Matt. Part of why I'm burnt on the MCU as a former fan is the relation to the fan base that have just become the centrist Democrats to the Snyder Bros Republicans, if you follow me. Yeah, I can see that. I haven't, I still watch the MCU movies, but I don't really I don't get excited for them. I haven't been excited for one in a very long time. They're just sort of the thing. They're the movie that you watch. But like the last MCU movie I saw in theaters was like last fall. I saw Shang-Chi. Oh no. Because like earlier this month for our anniversary, my wife and I went to go see the Bob's Burgers movies, and that was solid. But before that, yeah, Shang-Chi. But like I very often would just completely not see the Marvel movie in theaters, and I would just like watch it when it came out on DVD or whatever. Like I never saw any of the Spider-Man. I've never seen a Spider-Man movie in theaters. I don't think I've ever seen. I can't even remember which Marvel movies I actually saw. I think I saw the Thanos ones. I saw those ones in theater. But yeah. But I don't really have like a lot of things that I'm a big fan of anymore. Even like things that I thought I would like tabletop games I find really fun. But like, I don't know, Wizards of the Coast has been exposed to be a pretty shitty company. And pretty much every like major like culture figure, like every content creator and everything like that always turns out to be shitty at the end. So there's really no like, enjoying like being a fan of anybody. So just sort of, I don't know. WandaVision was good. I did enjoy that. But Spider-Verse was good too. Not even the 2000s movies. I think I saw the first Spider-Man movie in theaters, but that's it. I don't think I saw Spider-Man 2 in theaters or the Spider-Man 3. I have like there's a lot of movies I haven't seen. I get friggin' roasted on Twitter because in the podcast I'm always getting movie facts wrong because I've never seen like any movie. What's happening now is cause of the Sino-U.S. trade war and the epidemic. I don't know what you're referring to. Have you enjoyed 3D printing? No. I did a very ADHD thing, which is that I hit one snag on my 3D printer and I couldn't get it to print properly. And then I'm like, all right, I'll come back and fix this later, and then never did. So I have like a fully functional 3D printer in my basement that I am like, one of these days I'm going to take the time to get it to actually work, and then I never actually do. So I still have yet to make a actual finished working print because I have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, which means that I can't like I hit like one snag and my hyper focus is gone and I don't want to touch it ever again. No ethical consumption under capitalism. Yeah. So like, yeah, there's the whole no ethical consumption under capitalism thing when it comes to culture, but it's also just like, I don't know. I find it very hard to get excited about new media these days. Which I know is really weird. All right. So let's do one more question, and then actually we are at 1 o'clock. I'm gonna just take a quick washroom break, and then I will be back. So hang on for like 2 minutes. All right, everybody. Sorry about that. I am back. Let's just get the camera back on. Hello. What was Chapin up to while I was gone? Let's see. Why is there no left-wing party in America? I actually made a video about that. It's one of my favorite ones. Essentially, it has to do with the fact that the Cold War was a period of explicitly anti-left activism in America. And essentially, anybody who held any left-wing opinions was brutally ousted from politics and a lot of parts of society and had their careers destroyed. And since then, it has been actively a threat to your existence to have left-wing opinions until very recently. So being a socialist of any sort of variety has been met with brutal retaliation in the United States. And so then, yeah, so they were blackballed and all sorts of stuff. And People just like, you don't want to get involved with left-wing activism because that might be bad for your career. Like I remember when I was a kid, when I was taking an interest in left-wing activism, my mom basically was like, you probably shouldn't get involved with that kind of stuff because what would your, like, if you were trying to apply for a job, what would they think if they found out that you did work for like the socialists or whatever? And I was like, oh God. Okay. Hey, I appreciate your videos. Well, thank you, J-Rick. Much appreciated. All right, second question we got here is, do I have any suggestions for reading up on China? When I'm doing my own research, I can only find anti-communist drivel or completely uncritical texts. Yeah, that's a tough one. I don't have an answer to this question. Snicknob? Snicknob? I don't have an answer. It's unfortunate because, yeah, finding any information on what's going on in China and what kind of stuff's going on there is extremely hard. It's sort of like trying to find out about what's going on in Russia for similar reasons, which is one, these are two countries that are geopolitical rivals or enemies of the United States, which means that any information that we have available, because we in the West are basically our information diet is so dictated by what the United States allows us to believe and what to investigate. So, and also just like, the English language sphere results in basically getting whatever the US wants us to think about China or Russia, which is usually very, very pointedly on one side of all of this discussion. Furthermore, though, China and Russia also are doing the same thing because they are also, they are empires and wannabe, like, they are just like, competitors with the United States, and they just want the same thing. They're not like morally better or anything like that. So they're trying to do their own sort of thing where they are trying to create an information diet that serves their interests, which sucks because basically when it comes to anything about what's going on in these countries, you are only really working between two different competing sets of propaganda, and there's really nobody who can tell the actual story, and that sucks. That really sucks. So I can't really have an answer to you, other than like I don't have why it's so difficult to find these things. Cold War is over. Why haven't we gotten over our anti-left bias yet? Because the generation that basically controls our entire economy and political situation grew up during the Cold War, where they were propagandized from birth, basically, to be explicitly anti-left wing. To think that any and all socialism is basically the root of pure evil. And they don't believe it for logical reasons because they were just fed a steady diet of lies and propaganda about the Soviet Union and stuff. But they are right now, it is so indoctrinated in their heads that it is almost impossible to deprogram that kind of shit from them. And unfortunately, those people basically, Silent Generation, no, this is the boomers. The boomers basically still control all of the money and all of the political power, so that's why. My baby is upset. Okay, the next question we got here is, what do I think of the accusations that Robert Evans is a Fed? Okay. I don't... Obviously, if there's anything that you have learned about any influential content creator in our modern day, is that don't like anybody. don't like, what's it called? Don't have any heroes. Don't. Parasocial relationships are extremely toxic, and they are always going to result in you being disappointed. So, what does that mean for What does that mean for the Robert Evans thing? Which is that, in my mind, so the case is basically that Robert Evans has done a few things that, are a little sketch. Which is that he's a journalist and researcher who studies the far right and basically right wing terrorism, and he does conflict journalism. So he has, because of that, he has been hired to train law enforcement on the topic of right-wing terrorism, which, if you've seen my series on the militia movement and the white power movement, I don't have huge complaints about, because American law enforcement is notoriously, they just don't pay attention to the far right. So if they are, if anything can lead to, the people who can do something about the far right taking the far right more seriously, I'd be all for it. But there's that. And the second is that he works for Bellingcat, which is a sort of journalism collective that gets some money from organizations that get some money from, like, I think there's like a few levels of connection away from, like, U.S. International relations stuff. And if you are, there is a certain flavor of tanky that sees, that basically uses like elaborate conspiracy theories of systems of money, where everything that that gets touched, no matter how indirectly, by money from the U.S. foreign policy juggernaut, is 100% a mouthpiece for that organization. I mean, I would argue that Robert Evans talks a lot of shit about the CIA and spreads a lot of talk about anarchism and all that kind of stuff for an organization that's supposed to be running for the federal, working for the federal government. If you want like a sort of person who's a radical leftist who might be a Fed, I think you're looking at the wrong person. I think you might be wanting to look at Mr. Man Bun or something, who like actively is like, watched by police officers because they're fans and such, and always seems to support U.S. foreign policy goals. Robert Evans does have some takes about what role the U.S. should play in international relations that I disagree with. Like, he does believe a little bit in humanitarian intervention, when, like, I would argue that if you look at like the history of especially the U.S., their humanitarian intervention has more often made the situation worse rather than better. But I don't think that's enough to say that he works for the CIA. That's a little conspiratorial. You need something stronger than just like, this person, usually this person funded this person, which funded this person, which funded this person, which funded this person, and therefore Robert Evans works for the CIA. And it's like, you might need something a little more direct than that. Funders don't usually throw their money away on just anyone. No, but people will, groups will fund an organization that they believe in the aims of that organization and not look too closely at what that organization then does with said money. Like, I don't know what I don't know what the sort of line of money is that is claiming that that Robert Evans is a Fed, but it has to do with Bellingcat, because they funded Bellingcat because Bellingcat is a journalism group that teaches data journalism to a lot of people, and they wanted to do that. Then, like, okay, but that doesn't. I don't know if that makes Robert Evans a fucking CIA plant. All right, let's see what's next. Okay, this is a bit of a mouthful, so yeah, I don't actually think Vosh is a Fed. I think he's just an idiot. He is what happens when you get really famous, or when you get famous and basically have an army of people who dogpile anybody who criticizes you. He's just like extremely conceited and doesn't believe that, and deeply incurious, and just doesn't believe that he can be wrong on topics. And because he's a white guy, feels 100% 100% comfortable wading into conversations that he knows nothing about and making very strong declaratory statements on it, despite the fact that he has not read a single thing on the subject and only is like going off of like some like barely understood semantics, basically. I mean, this is the guy who like literally streams himself reading Wikipedia articles on the subject that he's trying to be an authority on live Twitch streams like an hour later. So, you know. Say we shouldn't have heroes, and yet Emma Goldman existed. Curious. Yeah, don't. if your hero is dead, that's a better chance of not being disappointed. You know. Anyways, I don't want to deal into Vosh discourse. I'm trying so hard to just have him not be a part of my life. So. But yeah, it just makes me mad that that we've normalized, like, Twitch debate culture has sort of normalized this idea that you can know nothing about a subject, but have very strong opinions on it, and because you speak confidently, a bunch of people think that you are smart and well read on the subject when you are very much not. And it's not just him. I believe that like pretty much the entire debate sphere is made up of that. Like, I mean, there was like that one time where I saw that they had like, in like a politics debate, they had fucking Asmongold, who is like a World of Warcraft Twitch streamer and also possibly one of the dumbest human beings I have ever witnessed in existence. Just on, and I'm like, why is this person here? What qualifications does this person, except for the fact that he has a lot of followers, to be here and talk on this subject? Like, ugh. This is why, like, I try not to, like, I try not to join. I've been on a few panels and stuff like that, and I try not to join any panels if I'm being asked to come on just because I have followers. Like, if they know that I have a certain type of expertise or a certain like knowledge on a subject, then I will come on. But if they're just like, you have followers, so we want you to show up and stand for this position and thing, I'm like, yeah, no, I don't want to do that. You don't know Asmongold? Well, Asmongold is a World of Warcraft Twitch streamer whose entire shtick is basically he's like the head of this small subgenre of content creators where their entire business model is getting mad at World of Warcraft while playing it for like 12 to 14 hours a day. So, anyways, I recently got into an argument with a friend who thinks the purpose of the Afghanistan war is to promote human rights, especially women's rights. He wanted the U.S. to stay in Afghanistan and accused me of being unprogressive when I said I thought the war had been a mistake. He compared the war to a military action to stop genocide. I acknowledge that the conditions for women did get much better in the cities since the Taliban were out of power, but I'm not convinced invading was a sensible way to accomplish this feat, leaving aside the fact that the initial purpose of the war was to capture Osama bin Laden. Just curious to hear your thoughts. Thank you. Yeah, this is called humanitarian intervention. I had a friend when I was in grad school who did his master's thesis on this subject, basically adopting humanitarian language to accomplish a geopolitical ends that would normally be unpopular with a progressive crowd, i.e., hey, let's say that we're promoting feminism so that we get like nominally progressive people on our side for when we invade Afghanistan, or to justify the eternal war in Afghanistan. What I would say in such a situation is that you're not really making this sort of progressive space for women's rights in Afghanistan if the entire thing holding up their rights is a active military occupation. You are like it's like saying you made somebody taller by letting them sit on your shoulders, you know, or that you're or something like that. Like if if you aren't like, if the conditions are, or if everything is actively contingent on an active military occupation, it's not going to have longevity. And so and I think that in many ways, like the Americans learned in Afghanistan that like there is no way, they were already losing and there's no real way out. Like there's no, you can't change the hearts and minds of a country by bombing it into submission. This is just not a thing that you can do. Americans have been trying nonstop for decades, but that is, it doesn't work. That's the main take I have on that. Yeah, like, the Taliban are a horrific organization when it comes to the rights of women. I think you'd have to be kind of an idiot to not realize that. Did the U.S. conquering Afghanistan at the end make things better for women? Not really, because as soon as the occupation was over, everything went back to the way it was. Was there like a period where things were better? Yeah, because the country was under active American occupation. Now, if they really did care about women's rights, they would do things to help women get out of Afghanistan, and maybe do increase in, like, you know, gender-based refugee organizations and things like that. But that's not what you want. That's not what America wants, is it? America doesn't want to take a bunch of Afghan women who have escaped persecution in Afghanistan and settle them in the United States, now is it? Because that's what they could do to make things better for women in Afghanistan. But instead, they were just using it as a fig leaf, as a fucking onion skin to justification to bomb a strategic location because it's a very defensible region that is close to it's close to Pakistan, India, and China. I live right by Uvalde, so thank you for that last video. I'm glad you liked it, Jams. Oh, man. All right, let's see what we got next. Hate the fact that the Far have been using the Taliban to demonize Muslims for decades, and the moment Biden pulls out, they're celebrating the Taliban for being anti-woke. Oh, God. Yeah. It's like, there is no religious group that the Taliban has killed more people of than fellow Muslims. I don't understand. But yeah, like, I don't know. Plus, you know, there's the other aspect, and this is like the kind of thing where we're talking about humanitarian intervention. It's that, like, is that in the long term, you create more problems than you solve, because the Taliban itself came into power because the U.S. Funded right-wing religious fanatics in order to kick the communist government out of Afghanistan. Like, all of the founders of Al-Qaeda were CIA-trained operatives because they were trained to fight the Soviets in Afghanistan. Like, says a lot. Assume you're a leftist and I have one question. Russia or Ukraine bad? I'm making an entire video trying to answer this question. The answer is both and neither. That it's a much more complicated situation than one side bad, one side good, because and the buying into the narrative of one side bad, one side good is buying into basically the U.S.'s foreign policy goals. I will say, though, that it is very clear that Ukraine is defending itself against Russian aggression, and a lot of the justifications that Russia used for the invasion of Ukraine are fairly sketchy, and the same kinds of justification they used for when they invaded Chechnya and for when they invaded Georgia, because they use the exact same like sort of bullshit organizing or bullshit excuses over and over again. How do we fix policing in America? Easy. You get rid of police. You just no police. America would be an objectively safer place if there were no police officers. Policent. Yeah, exactly. Take the police and unmake the organization, and the 45% of city budgets that are used to fund the police used to fund actual things that would improve communities and make crime go down, like helping people get out of poverty, helping people struggling with addiction and houselessness, and having a place where having resources for people trying to escape abusive situations and things like that. That would be an actual solution to making communities safer and for reducing crime. But just taking a bunch of C- high school students and giving them a fucking weapon and basically legal immunity to kill people, and then say that that's what's going to keep the city safe? Yeah, no thank you. Yeah, Matron's Militia points out, the whole thing on Ukraine is like, there's just because you can simultaneously say that Ukraine is has a lot of problems as a country, and that the Russian invasion of Ukraine was unjustified, active, aggressive imperialism. Two things can be true, but trying to force a narrative about heroes and villains when it comes to a geopolitical engagement like this is not useful and all it really does is advance the narrative that the US wants to tell the world about the situation, because then that frames them as the heroes in the situation, which no. I would probably say, if we're dealing with degrees, Russia is definitely the worst actor here, because Russia is essentially now committing just like they did in friggin' Chechnya and Georgia, committing war crimes, and they're doing there's documents that they've been possibly committing acts of genocide and stuff like that in Ukraine. So it's an actively horrible situation, and not a thing. Russia fucking or the what's it called? Putin's government is fucking evil for all of this. But that doesn't, by transitive property, then make Ukraine this paragon of virtue, Didn't the OSCE report 14,000 people died in Donbass from the shelling from mostly the Ukrainian side in the 8 years after 2014? Yeah, possibly. I don't know. I can't speak to that. All right. I'm listening to Knowledge Fight's coverage of the Megyn Kelly Alex Jones interview. Oh boy, okay. So for anyone who doesn't know, Knowledge Fight is a podcast that basically covers what's going on InfoWars. If you want to know the whole sort of structure. The video Alex released as a response was so uncomfortable and blatantly white nationalist. He called Muslims incestual and blamed them for the Grenfell fire. Holy shit. Claimed Jeremy Corbyn wants to force Muslims to live in middle-class houses and said the CEO of Goldman Sachs is a satanic goblin who was only critical of Trump because he wasn't getting all the money. Why do I feel like despite moments like this, Jones will just be remembered as the gay frogs guy? Because he will be. Because that's the thing that stuck out. That's the most notable thing about him, unfortunately. Yeah, it sucks that like the dark how fucking evil Alex Jones is doesn't seem to penetrate into the mainstream more than he's just like this crazy man who says meme things. Thoughts on the new Quebec language bill? What's the new Quebec language bill? The answer is I can't really say anything to it because I am just hearing about this now, but now I'm going to kind of take a look. Bill 96, the government's controversial proposed law to perfect the French language in the province. An act respecting French, the official and common language of Quebec. Several pieces of, including the charter of the French language, touching anything from education and health to the rights of immigrants to be served in other languages. Oh boy. So, I'm not going to sit here and read the news while I'm doing a stream, but surprised I wasn't already. Listen, the baby has made my ability to keep up with what's going on in the news extremely limited. So I don't really know what's going on here with Bill 96. Once you're in an English CEGEP, there are new requirements during your studies as well. All students will have to take at least 3 45-hour courses in French. Oof. For those with English eligibility, those can be French second language courses. So classes can so you have to take French class even if you're in English CEGEP. That kind of makes sense living in Quebec. 3 courses from your core curriculum. Yeah, so basically it's continuing Quebec's whole thing where like they want like if you come to Quebec and your first language is not English or French, they want you to learn French. And basically like English, if you are English, which, you know, I know a lot of English Quebecers, that you should at least have a working knowledge of the French language, which I also think is a smart idea for people who want to live in Quebec. But that can't be the thing that makes it controversial, is it? Is a French at the end of Sage? There's a French exam at the end of CEGEP. Okay. I'm trying to like skim an article to figure out what the controversial aspect is. Investigate. Oh, okay, so the French government has the Office de la Langue Française, which the Office Québécois de la Langue, the OQLF, has more power to investigate businesses for not operating in French. I mean, if you've ever been to Montreal, you know that like Quebec is being very like there's a lot of places where English is basically taking over. I wish Ontario schools taught French better. Me too. I have a baby boy right now that I'm going to have to put through the French immersion system so that he can become bilingual. Have I ever traveled to France? Yes. It was only for a few days, but yeah, I've been to France. I didn't go very far. I just saw Paris and a little bit of Chartres, but that's about it. So, yeah, I don't have much I can say about this bill. All right. So last year I read that the estate of George Orwell had consented to a version of a 1984 film from Julie's perspective to be written by a feminist writer. Given how totalitarian regimes treat women in real life, would it be unrealistic to depict a version of Julia's experience in the Ministry of Truth after she and Winston are captured that doesn't involve her being raped repeatedly? Oh boy. I mean, I suppose. Sexual violence against women in totalitarian societies is definitely a thing. Whether or not that would be a thing that you would want in a movie, that's I would not. But you can imply things without explicitly showing them. Or you could just skip it altogether if that's not what you want to talk about, because movies don't have to be that literal, but... Because, I mean, like, 1984 universe is fictional, right? So, if you want to talk about the effect of totalitarianism with gender and don't want to talk about the sexual violence part of it, there's still a lot of material that you could make a movie on. Depends upon how dark you want to go. Alrighty. How can we rebut the fear of crime propaganda with a genuine fear of police? I mean, they're doing a pretty good job themselves of just, showing that the police are an extremely dangerous organization that essentially seem to be the root cause of death for a lot of people. So whether or not to make a next level version of that, I don't know. Wouldn't know how to fix that, except to just keep drawing more attention to police brutality. Because yeah, correcting the record and everything like that only has so much potential because of the fact that the right has such a powerful propaganda machine makes things complicated. Oh boy. Okay. Let's keep going. The other day I looked through the Wikipedia page on ongoing human evolution. Most of it was neutral, but there's a part that says access to medical care is allowing some treatable genetic disorders to become much more common than they were in the past. It said if modern medical care goes away for some reason, there could be some serious problems in the future. Is it inherently eugenicist to describe that as a problem? Yeah, I suppose. I mean, there's I think that in some ways no, because I think that anybody can point out that with the way that our society functions, that if we had if modern medical technology was taken away from us, we would have a lot of very serious problems because there are because the miracles of modern technology have allowed so that a lot of people who have diseases that would have killed them without modern medicine are alive today. That is true. That is a fact of humanity, right? I don't know if that's eugenicist to say, because it's not calling for that means we need to get rid of these people, that we need to stop their ability to breed. It's just stating a fact about what would happen if we lost modern medicine, which is true. The thing about human evolution that I always think is very interesting is that apparently I saw that modern human evolution has resulted in our brains getting smaller, and that like as humans are evolving now, our brains are getting smaller because we don't have to be as much of like survival generalists as we were, 100,000 years ago. So we don't have to just have like as much of like a super like a big because like people in the past had to have like extremely developed memories to remember all the different plant species and remember all the different roots and all the kind of stuff. And today we don't. And so our brains don't need to be as big as they used to. Why are right-wingers so effective at aggravating and instilling fear into their base when their grievances are so stupid and irrational? Because they work together. The right understand that they understand propaganda and messaging. Like they know how to make a thing that doesn't exist and then make it into a thing people are anxious about because they have people who are willing to repeat the talking points in all of their media outlets, all of their email lists, and then they have people who are willing to go to places and protest and like all these kinds of things. Like they have the network that liberals don't have. And they know that making a good story that relies on feeding on people's biases is a much easier way to sell something. Brain size doesn't necessarily equate to intelligence. That's true. But as far as I can tell, like the article that I read on this subject basically was like, the reason why human brains have gotten smaller is because we have had less of a dependence on rote memorization in order to function, basically. And it's interesting because brain shrinkage happens to almost all domesticated animals. Like the difference between wild animals and domesticated animals is that their brains typically are a lot smaller. Mostly because all of the stuff that they developed to detect danger and to be afraid of everything goes away. So like, cats don't have the same sort of threat response part of their brain that like a wild cat does. And this is why like you can't just like domesticate any animal, because a lot of them still have that like powerful fight or flight part of their brains. It's kind of like the difference. It's why horses are easy to domesticate, but zebras aren't. Because zebras are, they still are very skittish. God help us now that we have Google to remember things for us. It's not so much like that kind of, like, it's not that level of technology. It's, evolution doesn't work that fast. Our brains have been shrinking essentially since we started writing stuff down and living in, like, ever since we started living in cities and villages. Because if you live in a city or a village, you don't have to be as aware of, like, local plant species or migration paths or just, like, have, like, a large amount of space memorized and held in your head so that you know your way around and you know what's safe and not. Like, the amount of brain power, raw brain power needed to survive when you're like a nomadic foraging society is way higher than if you are a agricultural one. Wouldn't it be easier to propagandize people with reality? You think, but no. The more the what's it called? The truth versus the, like, what's it called? You that would be nice, but we have learned that something that is a good story and validates your own beliefs at the moment is a lot easier to sell than something that challenges your current beliefs and is true. I mean, look at climate change. Look how well climate change denial. Because if you are a climate change denier, you don't have to interrogate our capitalist system. You don't have to interrogate your consumption patterns. You don't have to think about how you consume resources. So it's much easier to just not believe in climate change, while saying that capitalism and the way that we exploit resources has led us to this situation that needs to be reversed very fast. That's much harder, and that implies having to do a lot of really hard stuff. So it's harder to get people on board. Just found out that one of my friends from high school is a climate denier. Oh man, that reminds me of this one of the most awkward times of my life. I was on vacation at this little Mexican place, this resort, and my wife had become friends with this woman at the pool, and she wanted to hang out with her for a while. And in order to accomplish that, she was like, "You have to go and entertain her husband." And so you have to go and hang out with her husband while we go hang out over here. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'll do this and make you happy. And the guy was like a climate change denying Jordan Peterson fan. And I'm like, okay. I didn't want to start a fight or anything like that because I was on vacation and I didn't want to piss off Kelly. So I just had to kind of endure that situation for a while, and it was very awkward. The things you do for love, right? Should Quebec and Acadian French be taught on Duolingo separate from its French course? I mean, you could try, but the thing is that it's not that's the thing is I don't know about Acadian, but Quebecois French isn't formalized. You couldn't take a class in Quebec French. It's not formal in that sense. People who take the language that Quebecois people learn in schools is France French. And so it's not its own formal language, so it would be very difficult to make such a thing. If they were formalized, sure, but that's not the case right now. Definitely not Acadians are enough us to justify it. Yeah, fair. But I mean, there's no formalized joual either. So for example, Pim, to make it make sense, it's Quebec, Acadian French and Quebec French is not like Afrikaans and Dutch, right? Afrikaans has fully developed into its own language at this point, while Quebec and Quebecois and Acadian French are very much just very much just unofficial regional dialects, basically. I tried jingling keys in front of him. No. I just kind of the trick. If you want a trick in a conversation where you're you don't super want to participate, but also you want to appear charismatic and charming, is to just keep asking them questions. You just have to pay close enough attention that you can ask a reasonable follow-up question, but just keep asking them stuff about themselves. Because if there's one rule about humanity that you can learn, is that a lot of people love talking about themselves. And if you just keep asking people about themselves and just get them to talk about the things that they like. I'm trying to remember, there was this term. It was an acronym but it was like the things that their hopes and dreams, their professions, their hobbies, and like their families or something like that. I'm trying to remember. There's like an actual acronym for this, like Ford, I think it is. Ford. Family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. And if you just like kind of ask them about their feelings on those four things, you can just get people to talk forever. And not only do you not have to say much, but at the same time, that person's impression of you will be that you are very kind and charismatic and stuff like that. So that's the trick. And as a neurodivergent person, especially someone with ADHD, that's not something that comes naturally to me in conversations. So I have to like actively work to do it more. Family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. Ford. Those are the four subjects that are. I don't remember what book this is from. It's from some like old self-help book or something. But those four subjects are something that you can pretty much have a conversation with almost anybody about, and they'll have something to say, or they will enjoy that conversation. Like it's basically it's advice for having conversations with people that you have never met. Like if you're just striking up a random conversation, you ask about those four things, that you're starting a conversation right there. That's a really handy tip for ND people. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, don't worry, autistic people. I read you. ADHD and autism are weird cousins of each other. And so while we don't have the same disorder, we sometimes deal with the same shit. And so that kind of stuff helps. When should Canada start granting asylum to trans refugees from the U.S.? I would say we should already. We should have been doing that since the Trump election, but it would be an extremely bad thing for Canadian American relations if we started taking American LGBT refugees. Doesn't mean we shouldn't do it, but just like that's what we'd be getting into, right? Are we not? Not really. No. If you are you cannot apply for refugee for asylum in Canada, escaping LGBT repression in the United States. It's not a thing you can do. Our government's full of transphobes too. That's true. The other thing is that we also have to guarantee that Canada is a safer country for trans people than the United States, which it might not be. Maybe slightly, but not as much. No. Or not as much as it should be. Next question here is for Mia, so we'll skip that. Do you think it's possible to make a movie about Nazi leadership without making the people who didn't always agree with Hitler seeming like good guys rather than more reasonable fascists? I listened to the I Don't Speak German review of Downfall this week. They talk about a problem with the film that I've noticed in some other films that depict high-ranking Nazis. The ones who were slightly less insane coming off of the good guys, when in reality they were just slightly less evil. Like in Conspiracy, Friedrich Wilhelm Kerzinger comes across as a good guy when opposing situation, but what happened, or what he wanted, was to instead just deport all the Jews, so to reservations in the East. He was still a vicious fascist, just didn't want to go as far as Eichmann or Hitler did. Okay. I didn't know that. Yeah, I guess like Valkyrie is kind of like that too, right? The movie Valkyrie, with Tom Cruise, which was about a failed plot to assassinate Hitler. That actually happened, and it was by people who didn't necessarily want to get Germany back to like democracy, but they were just like wanted to be a more reasonable fascist. Yeah, this shouldn't, like, what's it called? Stories are powerful and important, as we are learning. And I don't know where to go from there. Yeah. But this is sort of what I'm trying to do with Step Back, right? Is that like history, like a lot of times I'm trying to make into good stories the factual parts of the past that have been misunderstood because their version of events are a much more compelling story that require less introspection, basically. No understanding of systems. Yeah, exactly. That's always the problem. All right. Let's see. This is the last question I got on my list, and we've got 10 minutes left, so let's see where we can go here. In 2020, scientists carried out a study where they found a group of people who exclusively got their news from Fox and paid them to watch CNN for a month instead, and then observed how their opinions changed. Perhaps unsurprisingly, their view of Trump and the GOP got slightly more negative. 2 months after the experiment, they did a follow-up where they found that in almost all cases, the people's beliefs had reverted to what they were before. Even in the case of objective factual claims like Trump lying about how deadly COVID is, their beliefs reverted back. What do you think is going on in those people's heads that they can't retain negative information about Trump unless it's constantly reinforced? I like Bernie Sanders, but my brain doesn't just dump stuff off I know I disagree with him on unless it's constantly reinforced. Yeah, that's a good question. Just came to say hi in the last few minutes. Well, hello, Nuntius. Thank you for showing up. This is the thing, is like I feel like this is one of those situations where our brains are very plastic, and I think that we are under the impression that we are a lot smarter than we actually are. And that we are, because we have this kind of idea that we are individual stoic minds that aren't corrupted by outside forces, when really in many ways we are just the product of, like, there's a lot of truth to that term, that you are basically the result of the 5 people you spend the most time with. I think that that's a key part of understanding humanity. That we are profoundly, deeply social creatures that are prone to strong group ties, and that also means group identity and groupthink, and that our concept of reality has a highly social aspect to it that doesn't, actually work with reality. But we have seen over and over again that any sort of like social reinforcement, including like media reinforcement, can completely change the way that you retroactively think and remember things. It is true. But yeah, at the end of the day, like this is the thing, that everybody could stand to learn about yourself, is that like the people you surround yourself with affect the person that you are, and like that like we are so affected by media just by being exposed to it in a way that even if we're consciously aware of it, it will still change our perspective. And that makes that kind of attack on our individual autonomy can be very, very troubling to think about. But I think it's an important way of understanding our like theory of knowledge. And so it's also why like we need to constantly reinforce messages, and that's why like you don't have to worry about repeating yourself in a lot of things. I repeat myself a lot in Step Back videos, and I sort of try to call myself out on it, but I actually don't feel bad about it, because reinforcing that message over and over again is important for helping people understand and rebuild and reinforce that. thoughts on Juneteenth becoming a holiday? Sure. Seems like it's a good day. It seems like there are people who are really excited by it, and I'm always down for more holidays. America has too few holidays, so. And Juneteenth, I mean, celebrating the end of slavery in America, it seems like a pretty good. There are worse reasons to celebrate, I would say. Do right-wingers actually believe this stuff that they say, like all the Trump stuff, or do they just say it because they think it's good to say it? Religious people do a similar thing. I mean, I think that's going to be highly dependent on different people. I think there are some people who support, like there's a lot, there's degrees there, because there are people who might not actually believe something, but they kind of convince themselves that they believe it by structural reinforcement and just by saying it over and over again. Like, again, kind of going back to like how plastic our memory is. Like, we can convince ourselves of facts about ourselves that are untrue, even though we made it up ourselves, if we just repeat it enough. Like, we are not that smart individually. And so, in my mind, I think there are a lot of right-wingers who can internalize contradictory information about their leadership and their positions, but then not believe it because they've just reinforced the same mission or the same words over and over again to the point where it's just part of who they are. And I think that that's like a key. Does it speak to how lib the researchers that they picked CNN as the opposite of Fox News? Yeah, I mean, like, it'd be interesting if, like, they took... I'd be very curious if you did the same study with, like, Democracy Now! Or something. I'd be very curious to see how those conservatives reacted. But my guess is that they wanted something that they could, in an academic journal, say is not Fox... has a different sort of totalizing worldview compared to Fox News, but is still a mainstream news organization that people would recognize as a source of sort of, say what you want about CNN, compared to Fox News, they at least have higher editorial standards. They actually have at least they're a group of centrist liberals, yes, but they also are they have a lot higher standards than Fox News when it comes to presenting factual information and caring about being accurate in the factual things they say. Which study? Yeah, if I don't have a link to this study, this is a question that someone submitted, but that's the way that I would probably think that the reason they chose CNN anyway. I used to talk to myself and verbally degrade myself regularly, and I think that consciously correcting myself was the biggest turning point in my life. Yeah, this is the wildest thing about human psychology. It's sort of what what's it called? What CBT or cognitive behavioral therapy is, basically. If you just learn to, when you denigrate yourself, to intervene and be like, no, I'm good at this, and doing random shit like writing in I have a gratitude journal in this book. If you just write 3 things that you're grateful for every day, you'll be actually surprised how much it will change your outlook on life. Because in some ways, the function follows form, and you can actually you can actively intervene, and even though in a that it's just you kind of priming yourself with your own words, you'll be surprised about how much it can actually still affect yourself, which is just it's weird. Human brains are just the strangest contraptions, I gotta say. All right, we are close to 2:00, so I'm going to break off for now. But everybody, this stream has been really good. Thank you for all of the wonderful chats and all of the subscriptions and bits and everything like that. Alex Kendi, thank you so much for the subscription. I'm sorry that I didn't get back to you. 19 months though, holy crap. But yeah, everybody, you guys have been great. And I hope to come back next week and we'll have some fun. We're going to go and raid Rob Rousseau. And in the meantime, though, as I always say, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and I will see you guys on the next stream. Bye-bye.